Hello, fellow Voyagers. Jess here with Odyssey Human, and here today to talk about ignoring logic. This is part 2 of our Manifest Your SP by Vday series. So welcome. If you haven't checked out the first video, go ahead and check that out first. I think it's best to do them in sequential order. And if you have any success stories, if you're excited to participate, drop a comment below. Let me know. I engage with all of the comments on my channel. And yeah, how's it going so far? Did you do your homework for the first week? How did creating a vacuum feel? How did it feel releasing that old identity? I'm curious. I want to hear your comments below. Let me know what you thought. And today I want to talk about, we're going to continue kind of the momentum that we've built over the last week. Today we're going to talk about logic and to ignore logic. Be completely illogical. So your tool this week, again, we're not particularly focusing on our SP, right? We're not affirming, we're not paying a lot of attention to them yet, and that's okay. It's okay to give ourselves a little break, because last week, what we did was really disidentify from that person who is like severely craving, longing, missing, hurting because of the gap, because of the separation, because that person isn't here yet. So we're going to continue this week. And then in the next couple weeks, the last 2 weeks, then we're going to kind of turn up the volume about our SP. So don't worry, no fears. SP isn't going to go anywhere. They're still, remember, they're in your awareness. They will always be there. And so they're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to lose any time or lose anything by taking a little break and shifting your attention. I want to guarantee you that. So that has been conditioned in many of us, right? We've been told to be logical when we were growing up. But really, what is logic? Logic is simply one possibility that you believed in, because my logic is not your logic, is not Sally's logic, is not Bob's logic, is not anyone else's logic. What we think is logical for us and for the course of our life is really just one possibility that we've put all of our belief in. And remember, last week I said belief is the secret sauce. I used to think like believing like, oh, how could I possibly believe in something that I don't see evidence of? That's the key. Like when you learn how to do that, you are not only a master manifester, but like shockingly fast. You can bend realities. And we're going to talk about that a little more today. And how we get our belief on board is recognizing how illogical logic is, right? Because logic, again, is based on our patterns. Logic is only based on the patterns that we have experienced in our life, the patterns that we've identified and given meaning to, and said, well, this is what's logical because this is what's happened to me in the past. When really the potential of who we are, like the infinite, vast potential of all the different outcomes that could be happening in our lives, right? You can see that in people's experiences, right? How when rich people, you take their fortunes away from them, somehow they become rich again, or they thrive during depressions. They just know of themselves, right? It's logical for them that they're rich. And we can see that with poverty mindset as well, right? The people who win the lottery and have a poverty mindset all that money will be blown, or it will suddenly disappear because they believe so heartily in poverty and being poor that transcends circumstances. So it's not, when you bring logic into this thinking, it really doesn't matter. Like you're equally possible. It's equally possible for you to be rich, to be poor, to be loved, to be alone, to have children, to not have had children. Like it's all of the potentials, the potential outcomes, the potentials for your identity, the potentials for circumstances, the potentials for even the small little tiny things in life that sometimes people will be like, oh, that's impossible. You can't suddenly have a 180 in a situation. Yeah, you can. And logic is just something that we have subscribed to believe in so that we can be accepted, so that people will look at us and think we're rational, so that the tribe doesn't abandon us, right? Because we're proclaiming something's going to happen, and then it does, and then, they look at us like we're we're a witch doctor, or we're crazy, or we're whatever. Logic is something we've agreed to go along with as a social creature in order to feel safe, in order to feel realistic. But really, logic is just one possibility that you're believing in. It's one potential. And I want to tell you a story. But first, if you're open to being illogical, and I'm not saying that we have to go out and proclaim things to people and predict them, although that is a very charismatic trait, we can do this in the safety and the privacy of our own minds, right? We don't have to believe in these patterns of what we've seen in the past. We can literally make up a story and talk ourselves into believing it. So and the more I have played with this is why this is your homework for this week. The more you play with this, the closer you're going to get to actually believing that you and your SP, like, the deal is sealed. Because the more you play with this, the more you realize that second by second, you are believing in a logical path of your life that you can tinker with. Seriously, you can tinker with moment by moment. You can project a potential reality and then emerge into it very easily, because our imagination, we are actively using imagination to create our realities, like moment by moment, right? You may think that today, your logical mind is going to tell you, oh, today is much like yesterday, is much like tomorrow. We're going to get up, we're going to go to work, we're going to have lunch, we're going to do this. But because you're anticipating that, right? There's an element of choice where we don't have to believe that anymore. Maybe today is the best day of your life. You can actively choose and believe, get on board, talk yourself into a story. Talk yourself into believing that something totally out of the ordinary is going to happen, something totally illogical, that the circumstances you've been waiting for break free today. You can do this. I want to give you an example of how I've done this, because I do this with relationships quite often, where I have totally revamped them by telling a new story and being illogical. So there was a woman I worked with roughly a year ago. I didn't get along with her. Let's call her Sally. And so Sally and I, she was superior to me. So Sally and I did not get along. We really did not get along. I found her bossy. I found her ideas really antiquated, and I wanted to do new, innovative, fun, exciting things. So for some reason, I was just like, Sally's retiring. And I made a video about this where I really tell you more of the story. I had absolutely zero evidence that Sally was going to retire. Like, I don't even know where, I didn't consciously take time thinking about a story I could come up with. I just pulled it out of thin air, out of nothing. And it was just, to me, a coping mechanism of dealing with the bullshit of having to interact with her. Because I interacted with her frequently, I felt like she was blocking a lot of my projects and my progress. And so I would interact with her in the 3D, and then I would always finish my thought or my story about Sally by saying, oh, but she's going to retire. She's going to retire. Like, Sally's retiring. I did this for about 3 months, just because it made me feel better. Not because I actually believed that Sally was retiring, but I said it in a way that I was like, it was firm. I was like, Sally's retiring. I was firm in that belief. I didn't really stray from thinking that there would be any other outcomes. That is one thing I didn't do, and I did it kind of unconsciously. So every time I thought of her, I was like, yeah, Sally's retiring. Sally's retiring. So 3 months later, And it's funny, as evidence, as I would interact with her, I would catch little pieces of evidence. Like one time we were at a meeting and she kind of like stumbled on her words a little bit. And I instantly was like, oh, she's not feeling good. She's retiring. I just kind of went to this, I used it as evidence. Another time she was out for a couple of weeks and I used it as evidence too. I was like, oh, she's retiring. So like she's practicing, she's taking time off because she's like getting her next plan together. I would make all these like funny, I would link this evidence to my story. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I wasn't like so dependent on the outcome. I just was practicing being illogical and then my belief went through the roof when Sally announced to all of us that she was retiring. So be completely illogical, even if you have zero evidence. This is going to happen. And I don't want you to do this with your SP just yet. Leave your SP off to the side. Okay, we're still, for this week, our focus for this week is to practice being illogical. Practice being illogical with little stuff. Practice being illogical, and I mean that by pick a random story out of nowhere and start telling it about something in your life and be like a dog with a bone about it. Just like, don't stop telling her. It's like, that's how it is. That's how it is now. Like, you don't have to spend a lot of time affirming. You don't have, just believe in it. Be willing to believe in that story, and you're going to start to see evidence. So tell me right now, say out loud to me, I am open to see the evidence of other truths. I am open to see the evidence of other truths. Or type it below. Type it below. So now that you've declared that, you're going to start to see evidence of other stories, other realities, other potentials kind of starting to bleed through. And especially fun, again, if you pick something in your life and randomly tell a totally new story about it that you have no evidence for, start telling that story. And now that you've declared yourself as open to that evidence, you're going to start seeing it, right? In your mind, you're going to start to have these little realizations of like, oh my gosh, this is true. Like, oh my gosh. And then the belief is going to build and build, and you're going to keep believing. And then shockingly, Sally's going to retire. And you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I literally am creating my reality. And I think it's so important to do this to remind ourselves, because the more experimental we are, the more we play with reality, the more our belief builds in manifesting, in our own power, right? When we see this evidence, we're like, oh, if I can do this one place, I can do this anywhere. So your homework for week 2 is tell a story way out in left field about something in your life. Believe in it. Be willing to see the evidence of it. Keep gathering that evidence. Keep believing in it, and it's going to be true. It's already true. I mean, it's already true. The minute you declare it, it's true, but build the belief. Be illogical. Be illogical. Play with it this week. Play with it with big things, with little things, anything but your SP. We're not quite going there yet. Trust me on this. Trust me on this. Just practice being illogical. Let me know what you think. Drop your success stories below. I want to hear what you encounter this week in being illogical. And yeah, that's your homework. So have fun being illogical this week. Continue the process. If you are still having some remnants of the old identity that we talked about last week, continue creating the vacuum. Continue that process of creating the vacuum where you're shedding the old identity. It's okay if it carries over into this week. So you can do both of those at the same time. Shed the identity and have fun. Have a little fun being illogical this week. Have a little fun coming up with a random story about a situation in your life that maybe is a little problematic. Maybe is a little bit, you want something different than what you're seeing. Come up with a crazy story that someone's moving away, or Sally's retiring, or just go with it. See what happens. So let me know I'm here for you. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Again, drop them in the comments box below, and I will see you next week for part 3.